If you could only have one lens, and it had to be a prime lens, what lens would you choose? I'd choose this, the Canon 35mm f1.4L Mark II. I very rarely do any photography. In fact, none of my cameras except for my Canon 650D are any good at taking photos. So what is a photography-orientated product doing as my favorite piece of video equipment? The lens is made mostly of metal with a few pieces of high-quality plastic here and there, as well as the rubber grip on the focus wheel. There's also a rubber gasket on the back of the lens which gives it its famous L-series weather sealing. This lens was designed to be used in any situation, and it certainly inspires confidence in its build quality the moment you touch it. But importantly for gimbals, it's not too heavy. 760 grams means that it will fit on a Movi M5 with a Canon C100 Mark II, and in fact these three pieces of equipment work together like a dream. Why? Dual pixel autofocus. Cinema cameras don't need autofocus. Well, maybe they don't, but it's really useful for gimbal shots. As much as I'd like to always have a dedicated person pulling focus, as soon as you have to film on your own, autofocus is a lifesaver. Now, Canon's dual pixel autofocus system does work with other third-party lenses such as the Sigma Art series, but no third-party lens is ever going to focus as quickly as an L series lens. It's a bit annoying that the C100 Mark II's autofocus only works in the center of the screen. Face Detect requires an EFS lens, but even so, dual pixel autofocus plus this lens have allowed me to get shallow depth of field gimbal shots that I've never managed to do before. And there's no need to worry about autofocus noises being picked up in the sound recording. The ultrasonic motors focus almost silently. And of course, the main, most important factor when choosing a lens, image quality. The images this lens produces are wonderfully sharp, chromatic aberration is extremely minimal, as is distortion, and the bokeh in the background is gloriously smooth. The lens handles flaring well too. You get an incredibly clean image. Now certainly you're not going to get the same level of character that you would get from a high-end cinema lens or even a vintage lens, but that's not what this lens is for. If you want a clean, high-quality image in the most convenient package, the 35mm makes an excellent case for itself. But a lot of these points would apply to any L series prime lens. Why the 35mm in particular? Well, I think that if you can only use one focal length, then this is it. 35mm is wide enough for some landscape shots, but it can also work when you need to get a close-up on someone's face. This is on a Super 35 or APS-C camera. On a full-frame camera, it's a bit different because of crop factor. 50mm on a full-frame camera is roughly equivalent to a 35mm on a Super 35 or APS-C camera. Wide open at f1.4, you're also getting the perfect amount of depth of field. The background is out of focus, giving you some nice separation from your subject, but you're still able to see what's going on behind. With an 85mm at f1.4, you will struggle to see anything that's more than 1 or 2 meters behind your subject. But why a prime lens? Zoom lenses give you the coverage of multiple prime lenses, but with a much lower setup time. 2 reasons: creativity and f1.4. If you look at the average Canon L series zoom lens, the maximum aperture is f2.8, which is significantly slower than f1.4. Whilst I'm aware of the 2 Sigma Art zooms with their incredible f1.8 apertures, you are sacrificing the build quality and autofocus speed of the Canon L series. Maybe it's worth it for a non-Canon camera, but with a Cinema EOS series camera, I'm a big fan of how they work with the Canon lenses. And secondly, creativity. Primes force you to think, to make creative choices about what focal length you want to use, not just randomly zoom in and out based on how far away you are from your subject. That being said, Of course, there are times when zooms are needed so you can work faster and get more shots. But for creative projects, I have come to enjoy the practice of carefully selecting which lens I want to use for each shot. Right up until we have 1 hour left of the shoot and we still have a whole page to do on the shot list. Then zoom lenses are kind of nice.
Fix thy foot!